The rebirth of Seoul as the capital of Joseon. Bukchon's division from Namchon with the Cheonggyecheon as the border. Seoul is divided largely into two parts, north and south, with the Hangang River between them. The northern part of Seoul is called Gangbuk and the southern part of Seoul Gangnam. The division between Gangnam and Gangbuk is not just based on geographical location, but on economy and culture as well. In the Joseon period, the Cheonggyecheon ran through Seoul from west to east, and the north of the Cheonggyecheon was called Bukchon and the south Namchon. Bukchon encompasses the area between Gyeongbokgung Palace and Changdeokgung Palace, including the Gahwaedong area in Jongno-gu, while Namchon covered the northern base of Namsan around Piltong in Junggu. Bukchon was home to relatively well-off, powerful aristocrats, while Namchon was crowded with poor literati, yangban, and commoners. Accordingly, literati culture flourished in Bukchon, while popular culture developed in Namchon. Yangban refers to aristocrats including both civil officials and military officials in the Goryeo and Joseon periods. They were also called Sadebu, Sajok, Saryu, and Sarim. Sadebu refers to the literati in general. Later, the meaning of the term Yangban expanded to designate the ruling class, including all civil and military officials and their families. The literati class enjoyed a variety of privileges in the Joseon period. For instance, the children of an official of the third rank or above could automatically enter officialdom. Also, they were assigned to the garrison that defended the royal palaces and the capital as professional soldiers and could fulfill their military duty in Seoul, while commoners had to serve in the army for a long time in dangerous border areas. The freeborn, Yangin class was allowed to take civil service exams, but they had to be recommended by officials of 3 out of 5 Hansongbu offices. Unlike the freeborn class, the literati class had ample opportunity to receive education and were wealthy enough to focus on studying without financial worries. With such privileges as the basis, the literati living in Bukchon monopolized political and economic power and enjoyed a rich cultural life. The majority of the literati living in Bukchon were from Seoul, but some of the Bukchon residents were from local regions and came to Seoul after they passed civil service exams. They lived in tile roof houses that were built with timber shipped from Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-do, and Gyeonggi-do. Slaves cultivated the land they owned in their hometowns and took care of all household chores. There was a clear distinction between public space and private space in the houses of the literati family during the Joseon period. While men usually worked outside as government officials and spent their time mostly in the outer quarters, sarangche, women were confined mostly to the home and alleviated their feelings of loneliness and boredom in the backyard decorated with a pond, flower beds, and an outhouse. There was also a rigid line drawn between men and women in terms of their roles. While men focused on their work and learning as government officials and scholars, women took responsibility for taking care of children and their in-laws and managing the household affairs. Namchon was inhabited mostly by commoners and fallen literati, which, however, does not mean that wealthy literati did not live in Namchon at all. The majority of Namchon residents were low-ranking government officials, shopkeepers, students from local regions who failed civil service exams, and ruined literati who had lost their power. But some wealthy literati built pavilions near the Namsan area and lived comfortably. As the residents in Namchon came from all walks of life, their economic status was relatively low compared to that of Bukchon residents. While some of them lived in thatched houses and had to worry about how to make ends meet, some others considered themselves middle-class citizens economically. Bukchon and Namchon were distinguished politically as well. Hwang Hyun, a Confucian scholar at the end of the Joseon period, wrote in his memoir entitled Mechonyarok, the north of Jonggak is called Bukchon, and scholars of the old doctrine faction lived there. The south of Jonggak is called Namchon, and followers of three factions, including the young doctrine Soron faction, lived there. The old doctrine faction occupied the seats of power and lived mostly in Bukchon, whereas other factions, including the young doctrine, the Southerners, and the Northerners without political power, lived in Namchon. Choi Woo-hyung, the former Minister of Personnel who lived in Namchon at the end of the Joseon period, is said to have protested the old doctrine faction's monopoly of political power by covering his nose with a fan every morning when he traveled to the palace to work by carriage, comparing the old doctrine faction's political tyranny to the stench of corruption. With Japan's annexation of Korea in 1910, both Namchon and Bukchon reversed their fate. While Namchon became a bustling area as many Japanese immigrants settled in Namchon to form a Japanese community, Bukchon lost its glory as the heart of Korean politics. After the liberation of Korea, the Jongno area regained its political footing.